Alright, in this episode we're actually going to cover smoked salmon on the big green egg. So you'll see what we have here. We actually have 2 salmon fillets that you'll see right here. And then basically what we're going to do is we're going to puncture that with our meat tenderizer. And we're going to do that with leaving the skin on. So basically we're going to puncture it up, tenderize that meat, leave the skin on, and then we're going to put it in our prepping tray over here. And we're going to marinate it for about 12 hours with the low sodium teriyaki sauce and honey. And then we're going to dust that with some blackened seasoning. We're going to leave it in the refrigerator for, like I said, about 12 hours, a little bit less than 12 hours before you're ready to put it on the egg. We're actually going to be grilling this tonight on a cedar wood plank, but we're also going to be using a lighter wood chip like pecan or maple. So it should be real good and smoky, so we're going to prep this real quick, and then I'll show you what it looks like once it's prepped. And then we will put it in the fridge and let it hang out. Okay, so we've punctured the fish now. I don't know if you can see it quite here on there, but we just kind of liberally just punched holes in the top of it. Now, if you've seen my steak video, we're not going to flip these and puncture the other side because we left the skin on by design, basically so that as the marinade seeps through those puncture points, it'll kind of get trapped in the skin, which will make the skin really easy to pull off later. So what we're going to do first is we're actually going to put a liberal amount of honey all over the salmon. So we're just going to kind of drizzle it here. This is really just to kind of sweeten it up. It'll really actually caramelize on the top to lock in a lot of that juicy flavor on the inside as well. So we're just going to kind of go around here. Don't really have a measurement for you, just kind of eyeball it. That's probably more than enough actually, but like I said, a lot of my marinades, they kind of cook off as they're in the egg anyway, so you really can't go with too much. So then what we're going to do is we're going to take the teriyaki sauce, and we're really just going to try to cover the entire fillets. Make sure they just stay super saturated while they're marinating all that time. You already see it's getting really kind of thick and goopy, definitely like a little bit of a sweet and sour sauce. So this will definitely have an Asian taste to it. But the smokiness will offset that a little bit, so it's going to taste really rich. Alright, so now that we've used that bottle of teriyaki, we're going to take some blackened seasoning, just add a little bit of kick to this, because right now it's going to be pretty sweet at this point. So you don't have to add too much, because we're actually going to pull this out and take the skin off after it's done marinating. And we're actually going to do a dry dusting of the blackened seasoning on both sides before we put it on the cedar plank on the grill. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to close this up, and we're going to let it hang out for about 12 hours, slightly less than 12 hours. Alright, so this is basically what your prep station is going to look while you're getting your big green egg warmed up. But what I did here is I basically pulled the salmon out of the refrigerator, and I let it kind of warm up a little bit to room temperature, and then I did a dry dusting of blackened seasoning on both sides. I actually removed the skin from the back. Now you're still going to have a little bit of membrane on the back, but that usually cooks off and it should pull away easily with a fork. Just want to try to watch to not eat any skin. You can cook it with the skin on. Some people prefer to do that. I'm kind of indifferent, honestly. I just like to add the seasoning on both sides to lock in a lot of that moisture. Wood chips, you're going to let these soak for about 30 minutes, but tonight we're going with maple. Typically I go with pecan, we're a little bit out, but the sweetness and lighter wood of that maple will really sink into that teriyaki and honey that we marinated the salmon in pretty well, so it'll complement it. And then actually tonight we're going to cook it on a cedar wood plank. So you'll see what I've done here. This has to soak for an hour, so it's been probably about in there for 20 minutes, but you just want to fill your sink up, obviously a clean sink, and then I usually place a piece of Tupperware over it just to weight it down to make sure that it's completely underwater for full coverage. And you really want that to soak for at least an hour so it doesn't catch fire, but it'll still slowly smoke into your meat as well. So this salmon is going to be super smoky with the wood chips as well as the cedar plank, but it should be delicious. So what we're going to do now is while this is kind of hanging out, like I said, I've probably prepped this for about a half hour, so we have another half hour until we can even put it on the egg. So I'm going to go warm up the egg right now, and then once it's good to go, we're going to put all this on.
Alright, so now that we have the grill up to about, it's actually sitting at about 500, so it's a little bit warm, but that's okay because it'll lose some heat. We're basically going to put in the maple wood chips right now. We're going to try to get as much as we can in. They've been soaking for about 30 minutes. So then we're going to put the grate back on. And then basically we're just going to take the cedar wood plank with the salmon on it. We're going to put it in the middle of the grill. So now what we're going to try to do is we're going to close it off. And we're basically going to try to close the dampers to get it down to around 350, 400. If you're a little bit below or above, that's fine because you can always cook it longer. So it's about 20 minutes, so we're going to check on the salmon right now. You'll see it's got a nice golden brown to it, so what we're going to do is we're going to kind of poke at it, and if it flakes up and you're seeing it's doing it right there on both sides, that pretty much indicates it's done. So this is ready to pull. So basically we're just going to kind of scrape it right off cedar plank. You're going to want to leave the cedar plank on for a while because it's still, you know, a fire hazard, it can burn. So we're going to pull it off. And we're going to close this thing up. I'm actually going to close off the dampers right now just to go ahead and retire the egg for the night. And it should be all set and ready for dinner in a minute.
Alright, so it's been about 22 minutes total cook time. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to assemble my plate. My wife and I actually like to just eat a half a fillet each. You could eat a whole one, I've done it before. But we're trying to watch our portion sizes, so just going to take a piece of this guy. He looks really good, smells super smoky, definitely looks moist. Tonight with it we're going to have rice pilaf. We typically cook this with chicken broth instead of water. It just adds a lot more flavor and thickness to it. So I'm going to get a healthy amount of that on the side. And then lastly, we're going to finish it off with some Asian medley steamed fresh vegetables. So let's get a good portion of that, get our greens in as well. And this is a pretty balanced meal. So we're going to take this back to the seat and enjoy our first bite, and after that we should be good to go. So we're basically going to eat this with no condiments. It's pretty juicy as it is, and you can see it's flaking pretty much at will, so that's how you know it's done. So we're just going to take a little piece off the end here. It's pretty red, obviously it's salmon, so it will be red, but it's also red because of the smoke that we had. And it's absolutely delicious. Definitely has a hint of Asian flavor, lots of sweetness, and then the smoke of the maple wood chips as well as the cedar plank. Definitely has a good mix of flavor.